Good morning. We welcome you this morning as we gather in consciousness, as we open ourselves, all that we are, to a larger understanding of spirit, of truth, of the sacred journey that we walk. I'm Reverend Lisa Davis, Senior Minister here at Unity Spiritual Center of Portland, and I know that we gather, not necessarily physically, but in consciousness, in spirit, as we come together to create a circle of understanding, a circle of evolving, a circle of expanding our understanding of the truth of who we are and our ability to go deeper, to understand on a deeper level. And so wherever you're from this morning, I just invite you to snuggle in, snuggle up, to come together and to say yes to this sacred journey of life that you walk, that we walk together. If you're new here, I would invite you to just go to our website at unityofportland.org and get on Contact Us, get on there and sign up for our email list. And I want to share with you a few things that are happening as we move into, in just a moment, our opening prayer and meditation. I just invite you to recognize that part of us being in a spiritual community, part of being in humanity today, is opening up and expanding the truth of who we are. We have our White Fragility class. It's a book study, actually, led by Amanda Kassab on Monday evenings, July 13th through August 24th. You're welcome to join that and be a part of that discussion. It's being offered on a love offering basis. We have books here. If you don't have one, we'll be happy to give you one free of charge. We believe this is an evolution that's being asked of all of humanity. It's our last week, by the way, to bring in items for our food drive for the Community Transitional School for youth experiencing houselessness on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 12 to 4. It's the last week if you'd like to bring non-perishable food items. Are there things you'd like to donate? The Transitional School brings them out to about 60 families, and it's a wonderful way that we have made a huge change in the quality of lives of just a small portion of humanity this week. We thank you for your continued support. It has been such a blessing here at Unity. We invite you, if you'd like to give and donate to Unity of Portland, text Unity of Portland, all lowercase, to 77977, or go on our website under the donate button. And also you can sign up there for our e-newsletter. So I just want to welcome you. I want to share a little bit of what's happening. And I just want you to know that wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here, you are embraced here, and we recognize you as an infinite creation of spirit.
So sacred, so secret, so precious, this love. So sacred, so secret, so precious, this love.
So sacred, so precious. As we gather together this morning, moving into a time of meditation, I invite you to breathe in deeply, to allow a cellular remembering of the truth of your being. So sacred is the truth of who you are, who we are. So precious is this journey that we walk together. I invite you to allow my words to be your words, to breathe them in. So sacred is my journey. accept the call for expansion. I accept the awakening of my heart. I allow a deeper understanding, a larger picture of love as me now, as humanity now. I breathe in, I center, and in the silence, I say yes to the sacred, sacred journey of this life in the silence. The willingness to accept the sacred life we live, whether it follows the path we desire or not. We say yes to that journey. And as we enlarge our vision to recognize this presence and power that moves in and through and as us now, this quantum field, we recognize it's all God. It's all a calling for expansion. And we are here to allow that expansion to happen in us, through us, and as us this day. And gratitude becomes the sacred journey, the sacred life, understanding that this movement of spirit happens as I say yes within my heart. Yes to this day. Yes to this breath. Yes to this deeper understanding. And yes to this sacred life. And so it is. Amen.
So sacred, so secret, so precious, this love. So sacred, so secret, so precious, this love. I will share, 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 this love, this love, so sacred, so secret, so precious, this love, so sacred, so secret, so precious, this love, this love. With every single passing year, with every moment I am here, through the days of wind and rain, and through the happiness and pain, there is a reason I'm alive. There is a hope within my eyes. There is a light inside of me, a burning love that can't be seen. For long before I came to earth, we wrote the story of my birth, and finding heaven's mysteries, the colors of eternity. I will not stop for anything. I won't be silent, I will sing until the world can finally see, can see the light inside of me. God is the source for everything, the truth of everything I see, abundant life in all I see, and shines this light inside of me. This life was planned out carefully to see the God inside of me.
Thank you, Michael and Genia. A world, this sacred mystery that is searching for the light within every one of us. As we welcome you to this sacred space in consciousness, I want you to know that there's so much for us to learn and grow and love right here along this sacred mystery of life. Now, we're actually in the 5th week of a 7-week program using Wayne Muller's book, How Then Shall I Live? And I don't know about you, but I feel like humanity is asking us that question right now, every one of us. And in our country, I believe we're being asked to evolve in a way that can have a lot of growing pains, and it can hurt. And we can feel afraid. We can wonder what happens to us. And you know, as I come together with you, every Sunday, there's kind of this question right now when there's so many ideas and thoughts on the table. A question that's often asked of Unity ministers, and I'm sure of every minister on this planet, is, are you going to do a nice, safe, spiritual message? Or are we going to address what's really happening in the world and in this country and in our individual lives? And my desire, my true desire, is that every one of us allow the spiritual beings that we are to address and to move into the life that we are living. And that what's said in every New Thought, Unity, Center for Spiritual Living, every New Thought community is something that addresses what's really happening. Because when there's evolution invited for every one of us, when we're invited to evolve, then we have the opportunity to expand this understanding. You know, there was an anonymous quote. It said, when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where your power is. Can we find a larger vision? Can we find a larger understanding of humanity and the desires that we have? Can we look at this place that we are and ask the question, where are we to evolve? Not what am I afraid of, but where are we to evolve? Now, in Portland, Oregon right now, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of ideas and opinions. Portland has the federal forces uninvited here currently. We have protests going on every night. It's been a great honor for me to be a part of some of them because I believe in the process of standing in the spiritual values that we have. We're in the midst of battles, and that can look like it's a political battle out here. But my belief is everything that's going on is rated, it goes down to, and it can be taken down to its closest place to your core. And it is a spiritual value. It is a spiritual principle. And can we allow our hearts to open to that? John Lewis made his transition. This great, great civil rights activist and conscience of America. Reverend C.T. Vivian made his transition, another great activist. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, which might be taking backseat. I want to just state what's there. Those are appearances of what's happening there. Every one of us has had our lives affected and shifted and moved. So let's just say this is a pool of some of what we're looking at, along with some people experiencing illness or depression or getting a new job or not having a job. All of that is in the pool. The question is, how do I allow myself to be changed at depth and to respond to it? Where do I move? Where do I go? Brene Brown posted a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert that she said was both causing her to say ouch and thank you at the same time. And Elizabeth Gilbert had said, "You're afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control. But you never had control. All you had was anxiety." I'd invite us all to invite the universe to change us at depth, to change us, and to allow us to see a larger way of living. Now, in these first few weeks, we've looked at sacred self, at the fact that who you are is a divine creation of spirit. Who you are. Unity's number one belief is that there's one presence and one power, this quantum field that we live and move and have our being in. It's not dogma, it's just an invitation to consider that there's one power and it's available within every situation, within everything in our lives, and it will carry us through. If you feel like there's no place else for you to go, I invite you to let go and ride the wave of spirit of God. You will be held in its arms, in the love of the universe. The second spiritual principle that Unity holds so dear is that there is a divine pattern, a Christ within every being. That is not some beings. That is every being everywhere on the planet. The third thing is that the thoughts we hold in our mind will produce after their kind. And many of us have worked diligently for years to get certain ideas of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, out of our minds, out of the cellular structure of our being. What I'd like to invite you to maybe look at and understand is right now we are in an invitation to be able to see this in a larger way, to hold a thought that we walk together, we are one. What happens to me happens to the smallest of thee. It is an opportunity. We're taking that thoughts held in mind and we're being asked to expand them. And it is crunchy, it hurts, it's not always easy. Now the path that we use of spiritual practice again and again and again includes meditation and prayer. But the last of these 5 little categories is that it's not enough to know the truth unless we act on it. Right now, humanity is being asked to move from a me to a we consciousness. We get to know I am worthy and you are worthy. And it's a spiritual practice that I believe opens us into a larger picture. John Lewis said, one of the many, many quotes, "Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light." the journey that you're on to know I am worthy. Many times those journeys don't anchor in you until you anchor them in another. I want to just invite you to recognize that just maybe there's something more. The second week of this journey, we looked at sacred shadow. What's the stuff that's coming up? And that shadow is coming up individually and it's coming up collectively. And it is an invitation to evolve. It's here right now. And then we went into, what do I love? What do I love? What are these ideas? And we looked at that in several different ways. How do I find peace in the midst of this? We have practices. But what if the peace comes with an expansion? What if there's more God than I realized here? What if there's more love for me to share? And today we're looking at sacred life. How will I live knowing I will die? And that's a big one. Every one of us here knows that we will die. That's the journey of this life. We don't know when. But this is a Buddhist idea. It's a spiritual practice of living our lives knowing, wow, if I had a year, if I had a day, if I had a week, what would my journey be? And that practice that has been done for hundreds of years invites us to take stock of our life and say what's really, really important. And as we do, I think we might just find something more. I know for myself, one of the exercises they have in the book is to write your own obituary. And in ministerial school, they have the students both write their obituary and do their funeral services, do their celebration of life services. And it's a fascinating, life-changing experience because it gives us an opportunity to say no matter how much time I have, what's important to me is this, and I can live this. I can find a way. We find places we want to forgive. We want to live differently. For myself, I got to answer this question, how will I live knowing I will die? When I was actually very young, I think I was probably 26, 27, 28. I'd have to actually look it up. And they said, you've got about 6 months to live. And as I found ways to allow my body to go through the seizures that it was, and the unexplained reasons and all of the things, and finally decide two things. And this was after having watched myself from above the room. I realized two things. I wanted to love. I wanted to love myself. I wanted to love humanity. And hilariously enough, I decided that dream of a 16-year-old of being a Unity minister was something I wanted to do. And actually, this was a few years later, I realized that was the peace that I desired. And if I had to have a nurse on either side of me holding me up, that was okay. And from that place, my life altered. Right now, where we are in humanity, you might think there's too much stuff going on. I invite you to say, what is this sacred life? What does it stand for? Because right now, the evolution of humanity is at a point where we're right at this precipice of these ideas expanding larger. And it's not us and them. It's how do I live these ideas? Myrtle Fillmore said the restoring power of spirit in the midst of you works quickly and harmoniously to build in the cells and the harmonious movement of substance that will knit together whatever place needs rebuilding. In our bodies, in our lives, we don't always know what our soul has chosen. But this I know for you. You have come to live that sacred life. Mary Oliver, at the end of her beautiful poem, and it's in this book, How Then Shall I Live, which I'd invite you to work with right now during this transformational time. It has been so powerful for me, but it speaks of summertime and the grasshopper and strolling through the fields and being idle, and it ends with, tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and far too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And today I ask you that because I believe we're being asked to open up. If you're white, I believe you're being asked to break open some crusty parts of you that you didn't ask for, that you may not even know you participated in, but that you are a part of breaking open ideas. Every one of us on this planet is being asked to break open ideas. The reason we're working with white fragility is the places that squeeze us and put us on tension are the cutting edges of where we are. And you know, when I look at One Wild and Precious Life, I've learned so much from John Lewis. I have learned so much. If you haven't watched the movie Good Trouble, it's a documentary. I invite you to do so. He talked about good trouble. Most of us were taught to be good girls or good boys or to act in a certain way. And yet the truth is that sometimes in this idea of moving and transforming, and that was my mission, to be a part of transforming lives wherever that showed up. It starts with our own. But this idea of doing that requires that we see something larger. I'm going to give you some of the history of John Lewis, and I just invite you to say, what does this teach me about my one and precious life? He was born in 1940, the third of 10 children to parents who were sharecroppers in Troy, Alabama. His great-grandparents were slaves. By the age of 6, he'd only seen 2 white people, and he had never experienced racism. It wasn't until he got a little older and began going into town that he experienced racism and segregation. And you see, this idea of racism, if we want to cure our economy, if we want to shift who we are and how we're able to be a part of the transformation of the planet, we have to break this open. This is a spiritual principle. It's based on everyone doesn't have the light within them. That is unity's basic tenet. Every being everywhere has the divine light of spirit within them. If we learn to function from there, then the laws will. The way we live as a society will. It's not us versus them, but it's standing in that expanding notion. So when John was 11, his uncle took him to New York, and he realized that he lived in a segregated world. He didn't know it until he experienced it. In Portland, Oregon, one of the things I found is that so many people have experienced a basically segregated world because there isn't the diversity so often. And we have to find it, and we have to live within it, and we have to invite it into our lives. As a young boy, he didn't want to do the work of cotton. And eventually his family, they said his head was in the clouds, and he would get all dressed for preaching as a young boy, and he would preach to the chickens. And that, some of his brothers kind of said, well, that was what he was able to do, was preach to the chickens. So we finally said, just send him to school. If he wants to go so bad, just send him to school. We'll do better here without him. And so, he read everything he could. He said there was a desire to make change. And he said he first heard Dr. Martin Luther King on the radio in 1955. And he began following the unrest and what was happening and the beginning of the civil rights movement. His parents told him, this is just the way it is. Don't go and make trouble. Don't go and make trouble. Many of us were taught that. And we shut down our lives in many different ways. We didn't believe in ourselves because someone out there told us. We didn't believe that we were part of a larger humanity and that there was enough for every being. We believed in this idea instead of working together and finding cooperation in competition. We believed in other things and we were told, just be yourself, just go through, just smile, just make the best of where you are and you'll be okay. What if we're being asked to be transformed at death? He said what happened next was he heard on the radio what happened with Rosa Parks. And he said she inspired him differently. He said, I heard what my parents said. And he said, she inspired me to make good trouble, to break open the things that he believed were not accurate, were not right. And I think every one of us is on that path. He said, trouble is sometimes necessary, good trouble, trouble to make change. And you know, he wanted a college education, so he applied to Troy University, submitted his application and his high school transcript, and didn't hear a thing. He was eligible, he had the grades, he had everything he needed, but they just didn't answer. So he decided, why not, to write Dr. Martin Luther King. And King actually responded to him and sent him a round-trip bus ticket to Montgomery, Alabama. And he said when he walked in, he was shaking. He said, and Dr. King just said, are you the boy from Troy? And that he couldn't even speak. He couldn't get the words out. He felt like he was in the middle of a movement that he didn't understand, but that spoke to him so strongly. And he said, we thought about suing the university. And yet what he realized and what his parents said was, what will it do to us? And it's hard sometimes to change. He realized his parents could lose their farm, their home, their lives. And so he decided to study in Nashville. And I want to just take a moment and say, let's go to right now. 2 years ago, so in about somewhere around 20, I don't know where it was, 17, 18, in a rally in Dallas, Texas, to protest what was happening with voting rights, the idea that every person is worthy of having their vote counted. Doesn't matter who you vote for. It matters that the divine in you is held and is known. And he said that relates to our he said at that rally, it is not enough to see what is happening and do nothing. It is a time for all of the citizens of Dallas to get in trouble, good trouble. He reminded them that he'd been arrested 40 times. And since he's been in Congress, even 5 more times. So he'd been arrested 45 times. Now, to those of us who were taught, don't make waves, let's hold the space and pray. This is a real interesting part. What if it's like that chaos theory, where for a new idea to be formed, that old idea has to be broken open. It has to go further. It has to move further. And he said, my philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, you say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. And I've been looking at that over and over and over again. Now, also while in school, John took a 6-month class in the art and practice of nonviolence as a way to make a change. And at the end of that class, he said, this is who I am. And he lived the rest of his life in a practice of nonviolence because he had a belief that if he could hold that vision and love others when they did not love him, that life would shift and change. And Dr. Lawson, who taught that class and went so deep into these ideas, said the first thing that had to happen was that we had to change. We had to change. He said, first we had to change. And since we were no longer going to accept the segregation, and they were talking about lunch counters, it was over with. We protested because we had changed. They realized they had the value to sit at a lunch counter, the same as any other human being. These are spiritual principles that we're called to act and move and allow to express through us. And he said we continue to give them the opportunity to also change because we believe that change in every human is possible. And what also is said, and I believe John Lewis said, he said the thing is we had to learn to love them, those that called us names, those that threw food on us, those that beat us. That's the spiritual journey. To stand in the truth we know and to allow it to transform us. And when we do, we find a deeper way. Now you might say, how does this life relate to my life? I want to say right now in humanity, we are being asked to expand our minds, to understand something larger is happening here. And to not say, that's bad, but instead to say, I wonder why this is happening. We can be so upset over, quote, riots that are happening. Protests are important. And you know what? You have them all the time. We have them inside ourselves where we say, no more do I allow myself to be treated like this or to believe this about myself. We say it to the thoughts in our minds that say, no more. This truth of who I am is larger than this belief that I'm not worthy. Well, that same experience is it's happening right now in our country and in humanity. And we get to be the ones that shift a system. Because that's what's happening. It's not comfortable. I was told once that my job is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And that's not always easy. It's not always popular. But I know this, we did not come to say every being is a creation of spirit and then live as if part of humanity is not, even if it's in the systems that we do not believe we created. As long as we allow them to exist, we have chosen that path. And so the actions we get to take, I believe, is to look at who we are. To say yes to the truth of our being and of the expansion of that being. And then to say, I am willing to expand my circle. This is all about a circle of consciousness. This evolution is going to happen. It's going to happen now or another time because we are the universe becoming aware of itself. You are a creation of spirit becoming aware of itself. So if a riot is the language of the unheard, what does it take for me to listen more? To say, wait a minute, there have been eons of people saying, this isn't working. I hope you've listened on YouTube to the conversations, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, short, easy to understand ideas of what's happening. John Lewis said what he found when they said, what really touched you? He said, I hated the system. I absolutely, from the beginning. He said, when I first walked downtown and I saw a system that didn't allow people into certain stores or to sit at certain counters because of the color of their skin, every part of me hated that system. We have a system that's still in place that does that. There would not be this many people experiencing pain and suffering and death if there wasn't. Our spiritual principles give us a pathway to follow. There is one presence and one power, God, the infinite good. That presence and power will source us all. There's enough on this planet for everyone. There's a divine in every being. There's a divine in every being. What is the thought that I must hold in my mind? For me, one of the first changes was, whoa, it's different for them than it is for me. And I was blind. I never saw it. But I had to allow in a message. There's something more. And if I'm fighting with, I don't want the destruction that's happening in the city of Portland, I want to read from the Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The first thing he said is, and this is the very first thing, and he said, I have to share this with you white people. He says, why are you all rioting? I understand protesting, but why are you rioting? And he says, I submit this. Dr. Martin Luther King said that rioting is the language of the unheard. For years, Black people have tried protesting, going back to 1965 and before, with the Selma March, and that didn't work. The people were beaten mindlessly. The beautiful picture of Dr. Martin Luther King and others marching on that bridge that is so often shared. They were met at the end with billy clubs and dogs and other things and beaten. We have to be able to look at that because that shows us how we evolve, what we do, how we expand. And then in 2016, Colin Kaepernick took the knee at the national anthem as a protest, and that agenda got moved to a flag one, which wasn't the goal. He wanted to raise awareness on social injustice. That didn't work. Now we've seen riots because Black people and hurt people are trying to get the attention of the oppressor. They are trying to raise the awareness of oppression. Do you realize that a world that works for all happens when we open ourselves, saying, Spirit, you just show me what I'm to learn. No more comments on this is the way it is or this is the way it is. Choose to educate yourself. Choose to expand your circle. You came to live a magnificent life that is a life of love. That is the only journey we are here to take. Love does not include those barriers. There are answers. It's not attacking a political party. It's building a stand on who we are as humanity, the largeness and the truth of all of us. John Lewis didn't stop there. I could go on for eons. As one of the freedom riders, I don't know how many of us know what that means. He was one of the original 13 freedom riders. There were 7 whites and 6 blacks who were determined to ride from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans in an integrated fashion. At that time, many of the southern states continued to enforce laws prohibiting Black and white riders from sitting next to each other on public transportation. The Freedom Ride originated by the Fellowship of Reconciliation and revived, anyway, it was a powerful piece. And literally, if you could, well, you can see it, look it up. Do a little research on it. They were beaten and they got right back on the next bus to take it to the next station. Buses were burned. People, he talked about, there's pictures of him and the white man that he rode with, beaten in this station and getting back on the bus. So when we talk about one precious life, I just invite you to ask yourself, how shall I live, knowing someday I will die? Do I have the courage to expand the love that I am, larger than I may have ever known I'd be asked to do? To expand the possibility and to stand in a truth that doesn't allow a system to exist that is less than love and acceptance for every being. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate this journey. I appreciate the opportunity to share. If it's made you uncomfortable, I invite you to join the conversation, to be a part, and to know that we have come to live a principle that's larger than we may have ever dreamed. And no matter our age, we are here as that expression of life, of love.
God, you are every mountain. God, you are every ocean. God, you are every canyon, every inch of earth and sky. God, you are every morning. God, you are every midnight. God, you are every moment, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. God, you are every sunrise. God, you are every moon glow. God, you are every star shine, every inch of earth and sky. And God, you are every springtime. God, you are every snowfall. God, you are every season, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you.
Michael and Gina, thank you for sharing your hearts and your love and your presence. We are so blessed. We are so blessed by all that is. I invite you to be a part of the giving as we say yes to this movement of spirit and to this idea that Unity of Portland, which, by the way, we will be 95 years young this fall. But to recognize that this spiritual community says yes to being a transformational place where we can allow larger ideas to expand us and we can live them and be them. And so as you tithe, as you share your love offerings to Unity of Portland at 77977, you can do it on our website. You can send in a check. I just invite you right now as we hold this space for enough on our planet, enough love, enough abundance for every being everywhere. Enough in humanity, enough in our hearts. There is that supply and that substance, and we know that it moves through each of us, and it flows freely in our hearts, in our minds, in our beings this day. And we are so blessed, and so it is. Amen. I just invite you, as we touch on times that are transformational and difficult, I invite you to remember that the truth of who you are is wholeness. You will be divinely guided in all that you do when we open our hearts to the next evolution, whatever it is, whoever we are. There is an order larger than we know. It is love, and it moves us through. The universe's invitation to you, to me, to us, is to expand as we walk each other home. We're going to close this service with our unity prayer. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Have a love-filled week, friends. You have come to be the transformation. Blessings.